Just wanted to point out the information we provide today is of a general advice. If you do want some more information, please seek some professional advice.
Welcome to the Retirement Living Your Way podcast, where we have real conversations with Troy Theobald and the team from RFS Advice. Look, today we want to have a look at a bit of a deep dive into one of the most significant transitions many families may face, and that's moving into residential aged care. And we thought it was fitting to bring Belinda Veriton, our head of RFS Advice Care, back into the studio. We've left Troy back in the office, and so welcome, Belinda.
Thank you very much, Greg.
It's certainly a pleasure for you to join us today. What's been happening in your world?
Oh, it's been super busy.
It certainly has. There's some major changes that have been happening.
There are some major changes. Obviously, 1 November marks a shift in the way that aged care legislation it's a shift in legislation. So we've had one set of rules in place for a decade, and now we've got a new set of rules.
Yeah.
So definitely some significant changes.
Yes.
And that's going to impact people to a greater or lesser extent depending on their particular circumstances. So it's, again, not a one-size-fits-all scenario. We have lots of different rules now. So we have old rules, new rules, and hybrid rules.
Yeah, which it just makes it even more complicated, doesn't it? And I think that's why this is such a good conversation to have, because if you have a look at the whole process, it's an emotional time.
It absolutely is.
There's lots of implications. There's the practical, the financial. It's sort of a bit of a melting pot, and I thought today would be a really good opportunity to actually sort of unpack that, and I guess sort of starting at the top around the whole move into residential aged care, and that's really, I guess, recognising the need, because that's really where it all sort of starts.
Absolutely. And so we're probably heading into the silly season where a lot of those conversations actually happen.
Families coming together, you haven't seen each other for 6 or 12 months.
Yep. So we're going to celebrate Christmas, and, potentially we're going to look at our loved ones and go, oh, okay, maybe things are not quite as good as what we had thought, or maybe we need a bit more help than what we had thought. So this is actually a time of the year that gets super busy for us. January is generally actually quite a lot of inquiry coming into the office around moving into residential aged care. And I guess the need to move into residential care is not something that people want to look at just as it's not a fun exercise.
No.
It's, at the end of the day, accepting that we've got some real challenges in terms of health or in terms of ability to function independently. And so that move into care is always surrounded by a heap of emotion.
Yeah.
And that emotion can be acute. So in other words, we've had, an incident like a fall or a long stay in hospital, and we've got some significant health issues that have landed us there. And so the family's now got to make a very fast decision with sometimes very little information about what to do.
Yeah.
And so there's that forced situation which comes up, and that's probably more prevalent than anything when people come to see me. And then there is the planned transition, which is far easier to deal with because you can take your time, pick the place that you'd like to go to, put your name on the waiting list, and then move yourself in a controlled fashion.
So coming back to that, catching up with family,
yes.
What are some of the early signs that you think that we should start to think about going down this path? Or what should people be looking for?
So the sort of telltale things where families would notice that there's things that are not right. In other words, we're maybe not functioning independently. Might be, meals that have, or food that's in the refrigerator that's been there way too long.
Right.
Meals that have been left in the microwave and they're growing.
Yes.
Because that indicates that we might have forgotten them there.
Yes.
Food that has been unfrozen and refrozen. Those are sort of indicators that somebody's memory might not be 100%, and that they might be actually doing actions or, activities in their home which might actually endanger their health. Another one might be where people start, they've misplaced things, but they're convinced that they didn't misplace them. Somebody's stolen them, or they can't, or they might not be able to operate the remote control anymore, where they always never had an issue with that. Or they might be calling all hours of the night because they don't realise that actually, so those are sort of signs of dementia and of cognition really declining. Other things might be if we notice that, the cleaning around the house is not up to scratch, or, the mowing's not getting done, or the laundry's not getting done. Those are signs that maybe people are finding it physically overwhelming to do the usual everyday tasks. And generally, a lack of mobility can be a significant issue. So there are all kinds of reasons why people might enter residential aged care. For a lot of people, there's generally frequent stays in hospital and declining health in general.
Yeah, okay.
Those other signs that I mentioned are probably not going to send you to the doctor, or they might if you've imbibed the food that's been defrosted for too long or whatever. But those are sort of general signs of, potentially dementia sitting in, and those are sometimes harder to actually recognise if you're not present and in the same vicinity, so geographically, I mean. So if you've got kids that are interstate and, elderly parents that are up here on the Gold Coast because great place to retire, then quite often there is that disconnect. They're not actually seeing the everyday reality. And then when they come for Christmas or, a holiday or a special event, then it's like, oh, okay, what's really been going on here? So that can sometimes start the process of the conversation.
And sorry, just on that, how do you have that conversation?
That's not an easy one.
No, because it's a difficult time. It's so sensitive, isn't it?
It's very sensitive, and a lot of people will not be wanting to move into residential care. They'll view that as, a slight on their independence or their ability to look after themselves. But the reality is sometimes quite stark in that they are not able to cope with the ordinary everyday things. There are some people who manage the conversation really well. A lot of people actually have to kind of get their GP involved in terms of, visiting the family doctor that's been a trusted person, third party, because I don't like it when my children tell me what to do.
No.
I'm only 52. I'll be quite honest. I don't like being told what to do by my 22-year-old, and I don't imagine that that's going to get any better as I get older.
No, correct.
So nobody likes their kids to tell them, you need to do. But at the same time, the discussion has to be had. And so there are obviously gentle ways to do that, to suggest, have we thought about potentially, wouldn't it be nicer if you had the ability to just not worry about the cooking?
Yeah.
Or if you have friends in a particular nursing home, that Mrs. Smith down the road is, she had quite a good time. She had such a lovely set of friends there. They did such nice activities. So, obviously not all nursing homes are equal, and you do want to be choosing carefully for your loved one. But having a friend in a place I've found is actually quite a good way for people to approach that in a positive light. So I have, some difficult older people who have been quite happy to go into care because they're going to a friendship that's already waiting for them.
Yes.
So that's one way to have the conversation. Sometimes it's just forced by the hospital because we've had a fall and there's actually no choice.
Yes.
You're not, sorry, Mary, you're not able to return home. And that's not a great conversation to have. And that's why I try to encourage people to have the discussion as a family prior. So, if we get to the point when we can't do X, Y, Z.
Yes.
What will that look like? What nursing home do you think would actually work? So if we have that conversation when it's not a fever pitch of emotions, we're more likely to be successful in that conversation. I've always said to my sons, I'll pick the nursing home.
Yes.
And I'll check myself in.
Yes.
I obviously work in this space.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I actually know that there are places that there's nothing to fear. It's actually going to be fantastic. I'm looking forward to the party where somebody else cooks my meals and wipes up after me.
Right, yeah, and you can even have a glass of wine at lunch, I think it is, isn't it?
You absolutely can. And there are that many bus trips and outings and nice things to do at some of those places that I would be quite happy.
Because I think a lot of people look at the negative side, don't they?
Well, they do. And they also have a preconceived notion which might be attached to something that was 50 years ago.
That's right. Correct.
The modern nursing home actually looks and feels like a hotel. It's pretty amazing. And you can talk to a lot of people. A lot of them will say, I've got a choice of what I eat at lunchtime and I don't have to cook it.
Yeah.
There's just a lot that is positive about the move if it supports the health, it supports the well-being,
Yes.
it supports social interaction. Now, obviously, you've got to search to find the right place.
Yes.
So that's not a small thing. Making the choice is not easy.
Yes.
When people come to see us, they are generally daunted by two things. The first thing is, how do I find the right place? Because at the end of the day, you are placing a vulnerable person that you love dearly into the hands of somebody else to look after them. And this might be your spouse. You might have been with this person for 60 years. You have traveled a journey from the time that you were teenagers to a place where they've lost their mind. And letting go of that person is not going to be easy.
No.
So making that decision is gut-wrenching. So accepting that needs to be respected. It's not something that you can trample all over. And then the other thing that they find daunting is, how do I make the money work? Because it's so complicated. There's so many different layers of fees, and it just looks like pea soup when you look at it. How do I make sense of this? There's so much conflicting information out there, and how do I sort through and make sure that I'm actually going to be able to stay at home and my loved one is actually going to be able to move into care? Or how does the family move through that if there's just a single person left at home? What do we do with the home? Do we have to sell it? Can we keep it? Those are all the kinds of things which are financially the easier part for us.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
That's just numbers.
Yes.
Numbers don't lie. We
Yes.
can work through that. We can provide them with a nice plan,
Yes.
which will show them sustainably what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
They have to be able to do the journey, which is the other piece.
Yeah. But I can sense and hear the emotion that you
It's
have with it,
huge.
and I know how much you love what you do, because I think you see the difference that it makes, and you
Yes.
and you understand it, and I think that's pretty special.
So the financial side of it is definitely complex. The emotional side of it is more so. And sometimes the harder part of my job is actually getting siblings to agree on what's right for mum and dad.
I fancy that.
So you've got 3 or 4 different kids and they've all got different perspectives and all got a different opinion of where mum should go or how mum should live, or somewhere in there's mum, and mum's opinion counts the most.
Absolutely. And so if mum decides that yes, it's the right step and she wants to move into, what's the process? What happens? Like there's obviously the assessment. If you just mind walking through that.
So absolutely, the assessment is the first piece of the puzzle, because nobody can move into care, despite the fact that I might joke that, happily check into the hotel. And I actually did say that to one nursing. I said, can I just check in? She said, just but for that ACAT, Belinda. So the ACAT is really, and it's the same ACAT that you get for the home care package,
Yes.
or for the Commonwealth Seniors Home Support Program. So that assessment really looks at what your needs are from a care perspective, and they make notes in their record as to what your care needs look like.
So sorry, they'll come and sit down with you. Is it?
So
what
sometimes
sort of
sometimes it's a face-to-face, more often than not at this stage, and sometimes it's a telephone where there can't be a physical face-to-face.
Right.
So if you're in a situation where we're in hospital and we don't yet have that ACAT approval to move into residential care, then that's, done in an emergency situation. It happens really quickly. For a lot of people, though, as they've moved through the home care system, somewhere along the way they've been reassessed to a higher level package, and at that point the assessor has put on there a referral code for respite care or permanent residential care. And so that's already actually in the record and in the system. What might need to happen is that there is an updated nursing summary or an updated health report, which gets done and forwarded to the nursing home. So before the nursing home can accept somebody, they do need to have that ACAT referral code.
Right.
That code gives them all of the clinical information for them to say, yes, we can, or no, we can't meet the clinical care needs. So that's their first step.
And then so they have the assessment, and then what?
So
Because it takes a fair amount of time.
So that all depends on when you start this process.
Right.
Okay, so part of being prepared for the fact that most of us will actually potentially need this residential care at some point for even a short period of time is that if you go through that home care package assessment process, which potentially you start at a level 1 and then you eventually progress up to a level 3 or a level 4 package, along the way there they have done that assessment and actually put that referral code, in which case you're not waiting for it, it's done.
Yes.
If you're in hospital, they'll get it done
because
they want you out the door after a certain period of time. So to get into residential aged care, if you're planning it and you've had, relatively good physical health, you should start the process early because there is still that wait time.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of people who are in the acute need of entering care, that is not necessarily their issue because it'll get done in hospital. So once we've got that ACAT, it now becomes a case of finding a bed.
Yes.
Okay, so the bed search is in some towns going to be really easy and in some places it's going to be really hard. So certainly the Gold Coast has a big retirement community. We have a lot of nursing homes. There are some small regional towns that really have very few. Yeah. Sometimes there is still a struggle and a tussle and a few weeks of, running around like a chook without a head if it's, urgent. But for the most part, we can find a bed.
And then, so if you do have the luxury of choice,
yes,
what sort of things should people be thinking about, and what should help them make the decision on choosing A over B over C?
Okay, so most people will be smart enough to actually engage with somebody to actually look at the affordability.
Right, yes.
All right, because there's no point, if you don't have the assets to afford $1 million room, there's no point to going and looking at the $1 million rooms. Right. Okay. So affordability is one thing which will play into that. But if we take that out of the equation and we look at what are the things that you should look for when you go and tour a nursing home, the thing I always say to people is you will get a sense of how the care is going to be from the attitude of the person who shows you around. So you need to feel a good feeling, a good rapport. You also need to have a look at, what the residents look like. Do they look mostly happy?
Yep.
Are they, clean, well dressed? Are there activities going on that they can actually be part of? Mm-hmm. You need to use your nose. So do the sniff test. It's very hard with incontinence in nursing homes to actually keep a nursing home smelling fresh. If they manage to do that, that means that they have got great cleaning in place, and you want that.
Yes.
Ask the residents whether they like the food.
Yeah.
So one of the number one complaints we get from people is the food is not good. All right, that can be for two reasons. It can be because people lose taste buds as we get older. That's actually a thing. But also you want to know that there is actually nutritious food and that there is some choice and different tastes are catered for. So there are plenty of places that would have on-site kitchens and cook their food fresh. So that's also, a really good thing. It's not brought in pre-packaged and heated up.
Yes.
And then you ask the staff, how long have you worked here? So you do want to know that it's a good place to work because if it's a good place to work, that means that good care is provided.
Yep.
People who have lots of agency staff, it means they can't get people to work permanently. Everybody will have some agency staff because people get sick and you need fill-ins and whatever. But if you've got a majority of staff members who've got long tenure, they like working there, that generally says management is good.
Yep.
And management is key.
Yes.
Key to getting good care outcomes.
Yep. And there are lots of good places
there
on
are
the Gold Coast or across the country.
Plenty of good places, yes.
Yeah, no.
There are some that we don't send people to.
Yes.
But and I'm obviously not going to say who they are,
No.
but there are definitely some where we are very happy to send clients and we know that they're going to get a good care outcome.
And I think that's one of the advantages of speaking to somebody like yourself, a specialist in this area.
Yeah.
It's not just the financial side, but it's also understanding,
that we've toured a lot of these places
Absolutely.
and we know the people who will be showing you around and we know who might be running them, and we've had the feedback from other clients that have been there. So we always ask our clients when they come back in, so, is mum or dad happy?
Yeah, you understand. No, absolutely. So, but on that financial side, because it is complicated.
It is very complicated.
I hear you talk about RADs and DAPs and all these sorts of things.
Yeah, lots of acronyms in aged care.
Exactly. Do you mind just sort of walking
step you
through
through it? Sure.
what that means in basic terms?
So there are going to be 4 potential layers of fees when somebody enters care. All right, there'll be the accommodation cost. Mm-hmm. There'll be the living costs. So that's food, water, electricity, laundry, all those kinds of things. There'll be the care cost. And there will be the extras cost. So those are the 4 buckets, okay? Now, the accommodation cost, there's flexibility in how you pay for that. So just like you can rent or buy a home, you can rent or buy a room in a nursing home. Mm-hmm. Slightly different in the sense that there's no capital growth.
No.
All right. So if we're entering a room which costs $750,000, we've got a choice of, do we hand over $750,000? It's called a RAD, refundable accommodation deposit, or do we pay a rental style payment called a daily accommodation payment? You can even do any combination in between those 2 extremes. So you could have $400,000 that's lodged as a lump sum and pay the other $350,000 as a daily accommodation payment. Now, the daily accommodation payment is worked out using an interest rate which is set by the government.
Right.
So 7.61% is the current one. Yes. Just like with rent, that doesn't come back to you.
Yes. Like I'm trying to, you sort of put it in those two that context.
Okay, so we actually have a different division. So if we are paying the advertised price for the room,
yes,
we have got the flexibility to pay for it however we want.
Right.
But if we are in the category of having the government support us in terms of some of the accommodation costs, then we're not called a RAD and a DAP, we're called a RAC and a DAC.
Right. Okay. Wow,
so that's not complicated at
no,
all, right?
No, not at all. Gee, I'm glad I asked this question. Wow.
Okay, so we'll just put those people that are RAC DAC to the side for the moment, and I'll come back to that. Okay. If we're paying the advertised price for the room, that means that we have the financial means according to the government's definition, and I'll underline that. Yes. Okay. According to the government's definition, we've got the ability to pay the advertised price for the room. That means that we can set our accommodation payments up however we want.
Right. Okay.
Now, under the rules that have just come in on 1 November, we have a situation where that RAD, refundable accommodation deposit, does not come back to us 100%. Mm-hmm. The nursing home has to, it's not a choice, has to keep 2% of what we've lodged per year for a maximum of 5 years. So if we spend 5 years in care, they can keep 10%. Yes. Okay. That's the first thing. So we now have a RAD retention amount, whereas previously that RAD was fully refundable, 100% refundable. The second thing is that the DAP, daily accommodation payment, if we're paying one of those, so we've chosen not to pay the full lump sum, that actually gets indexed with CPI every year. So it's no longer a static figure the way that it previously was under the old rules. Under the old rules, you entered a contract for a room that was $750,000, for example. If you chose to pay 100% by daily accommodation payment, you knew exactly what your payment was going to be. It didn't change over time. Under the new rules, it's actually going to be indexed each year with CPI. And there'll be indexation twice a year, but obviously they'll work out what the indexation rate is. So effectively, it future-proofs that payment. So in other words, the nursing home is not losing out in any way. So somebody who entered care a decade ago and still paying the old price, they're effectively going backwards, the nursing home, in terms of servicing that. Yeah. So that it's designed to kind of pull that back into line and make it a more sustainable solution going forwards. So that's the accommodation portion of the cost. The second bucket is, services that food, water, electricity, laundry scenario. The basic daily fee everybody pays. So regardless of your means, you're going to pay $65.55 currently. It'll go up every time the age pension goes up. That figure goes up, and that's 85% of the pension. So that's not contentious. But there is another fee inside of that same bucket called a hotelling contribution, and that is means tested. So currently, that figure that the government actually looks at being a hotelling supplement is $22 a day, approximately, just over. And if you're in a situation where you don't have a lot of means, the government will actually pay that on your behalf. But if you are in a situation where you do have some means and ability to pay, they will ask you to either contribute towards it or pay that whole $22 a day. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's just the living expenses bucket.
Right.
The third bucket is actual care cost. Now, for the most part, the government takes the lion's share of funding the care costs. People are generally not very happy about this means tested fee because it is means tested, meaning that people who don't have assets and income, they don't pay this fee, whereas somebody who's worked hard all their lives, paid their taxes, they can end up contributing towards this. In reality, no matter how you slice it or dice it, the government still picks up a really high cost in terms of looking after somebody in care. Yes. This is only the person's contribution towards that care. And depending on whether they're under the old rules or the new rules, they will either have a means-tested care fee or they'll have what's called a non-clinical care contribution. So that the equation for how that gets assessed is different. Mm-hmm. And as I said, it's going to depend on whether you're grandparented under the old rules with that home care package in place before 12 September 2024 or whether you're under the new rules and you're just entering care now and have never received any kind of home care assessment previously. Right. So that cost just offsets some of the government's outlay in relation to care costs. And that's where a lot of confusion comes in. So people don't realise that how you structure your assets actually impacts how much you pay in that bucket. The fourth bucket is one that's called the luxuries. It's the higher everyday living cost. And that's, the extra activities that nursing homes will do to try and make residents' lives better. So that could be a choice of meals at dinner time. It could be a glass of wine with lunch. It could be outings. It could be hairdressing. It could be any number of different things, and that cost can range anywhere between nothing and $100 a day, just depending on what they're actually offering in their package. And every nursing home will have a different offering if they offer it at all. Mm-hmm. Because we are post 1 November, you actually have the right to say no thanks to that.
Right.
You cannot enter into the contract to have those services until after you've signed your residential care contract. Yes. So you can't be locked into that anymore the way that you used to be able to prior to 1 November this year. So those are the 4 buckets of fees.
So that's really quite easy when you think about it.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So I was going to actually ask you a number of questions around the whole financial side and things like that, but I guess to me it just the importance of getting advice.
Yes.
And the modelling that you must do with clients.
Yes.
Is extreme because there are so many variables.
And as you move one thing around, it affects a different thing.
Spot on.
So it's not I'll just pull this lever and then it'll do nothing else to the other fees. It actually, all those things interact with each other. So how you set up the assets, whether you choose to sell the family home or not, whether you choose to rent the family home out or not, all of those things are going to play into how those numbers come out, whether it's sustainable, what it's going to do to the pension, what it's going to do to the means tested fee. So it's really quite tough if you're just sitting with a spreadsheet, and some people really do try this, Former engineer, I understand what a spreadsheet does, and I probably would be foolhardy enough to try this without software. But I wouldn't get very far because, honestly, as you move one thing, it changes everything else. And unfortunately, the calculator that My Aged Care has on their website doesn't really give any explanation of what you need to put in which box to actually get the right outcome out of their calculator. So sometimes people think that they've done a calculation and don't realise that that's not the calculation forever. So they'll get a means tested fee of, $3 a day, not realising that when they sell the family home, that $3 a day isn't going to be $3 a day anymore. It's going to be $30 a day or $130 a day, just depending on the value of the family home and how much RAD they've lodged. So there's lots of misconceptions with how simple that estimator online actually looks.
Yes.
And then people, end up with a mess.
Yeah. And so, look, I urge any of the listeners just to get advice.
Yes.
See a professional, see someone that actually understands it, works with it day in, day out like yourself, because there are a lot of moving parts.
There absolutely are. And even if you don't want to pay for advice, at least go along and see a financial information services officer at Centrelink.
Yes.
Because that's a free service. And if you think your circumstances are really simple, they're not going to tell you what's in your best interests, mind. That's not what they're bound to do. But they can give you answers.
Yes. No, that's great. So we've gone through the process effectively of, I guess, starting the conversation, having the assessment.
Yes.
Some comments around choosing the facility, the financial side. How do we emotionally prepare ourselves and families for that transition? And is there anything people can do to make it easier for the transition of moving a loved one into a residential aged care facility or a partner?
I always think that conversations help. So not shrinking from the idea that we're all potentially going to need some care at some point. I mean, some of us might be lucky and we escape it. But for the most part, most of us are going to need at least some amount of care. If you are open to talking that through, then it doesn't become this huge big hurdle when it actually needs to be done. Mm-hmm. I think that families that are open about estate planning, about their wishes, in terms of health decisions, if you have those conversations and everybody's on the same page, it stops the fights, it stops the disagreement between siblings, it stops the nastiness, it prevents that turmoil from having to be this huge, big hurdle. If everybody just accepted that this could be a part of their future, and they actually took the time to go and take a walk through and actually have a look,
yes,
they would realise that it's not the huge, big, scary ogre that, used to be an institution where there was just beds and a huge big dormitory and people were chained to their beds, and there's all kinds of horror stories that you hear of how care used to be. And maybe it was like that at one point, but it's certainly not like that now.
Right.
So take the time to go and have a look. People are pleasantly surprised at, how nice an environment it can be, how much effort carers do put into trying to make it a good place to be, how much emphasis there is on trying to give people an amazing quality of life.
Yeah.
Yes, there are challenges, physical challenges, mental health challenges. Those will come to all of us.
Yeah,
it's a part of aging, unfortunately.
Yes.
But it's about making choices that help you navigate those in a positive way.
Yeah.
And if you can have the conversation in a non-threatening, non-prescriptive, just general, let's be open-minded about the process kind of way, then you're not going to have that, dig my heels in and declare that I'm never going to one of those places.
Yes.
As I said, it is an emotional journey, and couples, I find it's more heartbreaking where we've got one spouse placing another into care. It's really hard to let go of your life partner.
Yes.
It's really difficult to trust the person that you love into somebody else's care,
Absolutely.
knowing that they're going to be vulnerable, knowing that they can't sometimes talk for themselves. So for families who are, needing to accept that their loved one is going to enter care, I always say it is a good idea to be in the same location. Everybody needs somebody to advocate for them,
Yes.
especially where you've got, dementia or one of those where there's not a lot of cognitive functioning happening, you do need an advocate.
Yep.
You do need to, be the person who will say to the nursing home, why hasn't this been done? Or can you please do it like that? Or and nursing homes rely on families to fill the gaps that they can't. So they can't be, omniscient or omnipotent. So having families come in and visit is a huge help for them. I have a lot of clients who, have had to place a partner into care, and it's a tough journey.
I had a few other questions, but to me, I think you've really just sort of summed up the overall journey, of the actual process. And I think it'd be really interesting for listeners if you could just touch on how you work with clients, because there will be listeners there thinking, I'm either thinking of going down that path, or I need to talk to somebody. Obviously at RFS Advice, we've got you and your team, which do an amazing job. What's the process like when they engage with you and your team? What does it feel like in real terms?
All right. So the first step in the process is a conversation. It's as non-threatening as a conversation. Okay, just pick up the phone and we have a bit of a chat. So we'll find out where you are in the process, if there's general information that we can give that's going to point you in the right direction to go and find the services that you need, or that you need to know the next step in the process. In other words, have you done the ACAT? So we'll guide you through the process of logistics.
Right.
If you need financial advice, and sometimes people don't, I'll be quite honest with you, there are circumstances in which they don't need my services.
No.
And I will say that straight up. So I'm not going to engage with you and charge you a fee if I can't add any value to your situation. So where the people do need financial advice, we will then obviously talk about what the service looks like, what it costs, so they've got a really clear idea of what they're up for. And then if they're wanting to proceed, it's a case of meeting and gathering all of the relevant information. So that session is usually an hour and a half, and in that we will do everything from gather the income, the assets, the goals and objectives, the budget for personal expenses, because if you're entering care, there's going to be care costs, but there's also going to be things like medication and still haircuts and clothes and those kinds of things. So we go through all of that process, and then we will, prompt you in the right direction if you're actually looking for a bed.
Yes.
While we're working on the financial modelling. Once we've done that, it generally requires that we've got some idea of what nursing home you might be targeting to get a bit of an idea of what the room costs might be. Sometimes people come to us already having gotten a place and they know exactly where they're going and exactly what their costs look like. We then model that to provide the advice on how to afford that sustainably. Sometimes we have to say to people that's not affordable on a long-term basis, and then they might have to make a different choice.
Right.
And other times we say to people, actually, you need a more expensive room if you're going to keep any pension.
Yes.
So there's that advice piece is basically presented to clients in what we call an advice presentation. So we'll actually produce a booklet that has all of the recommendations in it, puts it in black and white, shows you what cash flow and asset position look like over time, whether that's 5 years or 10 years. And so you've got a really clear idea of whether your chosen solution is going to be sustainable or not, or what modifications you might have to make to that. So once we've gone through that process and explained what people's options are, what's viable, not viable, they then will implement that by moving money around appropriately. And we will assist them along the way if they need it. So sometimes people come back to me 3 years later to ask a question because mum or dad is still in care and they just need to refresh their memory about what's the next step in the process. We don't charge extra for that. That's part of the initial cost that they pay. So we are there to support them through the journey. We will literally hold their hand from A to Z.
Yeah, fantastic. And you do an amazing job.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to work with you, and I see the care that you put into it. So look, I think you're an absolute superstar. I know your clients think you're an absolute superstar, and look, I really do encourage anyone that is going through this journey to reach out. As you said, it just starts with a phone call.
It absolutely does, and we have a great team, I will say. It is a team.
Absolutely, no, it certainly is. Well, Belinda, thank you for joining me this afternoon.
That's a pleasure.
It's Been absolutely fantastic. A relatively long way, quite an emotional discussion I've felt, but I think that really gets to the heart of just the importance of the topic, and I think that's why it was really important to bring you along. Leave Troy back in the office, but and I think you've obviously you do some talkback show with Troy and Colin on 4CRB, and I know we've got a few other ones planned over the coming months as well, which will be great. So thank you again, and ladies and gentlemen, if today's episode has raised any questions, please reach out to us at rfsadvice.com, and we're more than happy to talk with you. So until next time, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.